Welcome to week 5 of the 2023 fantasy football season. I'm Wayne Cavati, and you're not. Joining me, as always, is the Ned Niederlander and Lucky Day to my dusty bottoms, Mike Dutton and Chris Fiamano. Welcome back to the show, boys. FanDuel fee, minus the flag behind your head. How we doing?
Yeah, pretty good. Although had a horrendous weekend last weekend, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about fantasy.
Right. We could avoid talking about the team on that flag behind your head this week.
Yeah, the team we don't mention. Yeah,
it's a team that may not be named.
Right.
And joining us from North Carolina is Mr. Dutton. Dutton, how are you?
I'm great. Doing fantastic. My fantasy team was top in points this week, and we won a game because we had to be top in points to win finally.
Well, fantasy football has been miserable this year, injury-wise, I would say. There's been a lot of big ones. It sounds like now we got Freiermuth out of the equation for a couple weeks. I can't even keep up with who gets hurt every week, but we do have some big names coming back, like Cooper Kupp is now designated to be coming back. Jonathan Taylor. These are names that are may not be this week, but they're coming back. Jameson Williams is slated to come back. So we have plenty to talk about, and what better place to start talking about some of these names and some of these situations than this week's Buy It or Bullshit. Let's get started and go to the Jaguars have taken up residency in jolly old London. But let's start with last week. The Atlanta Falcons appear to be coming back to earth, and now my 7.5 over is looking like it may be in jeopardy. Gentlemen, Dutton, we'll start with you. Were any of the toys in Andy's bedroom on Saturday, any one of them, better at quarterbacking than the Atlanta Falcons' Desmond Ridder? Dutton, buy it or BS? The toys were better than Desmond Ridder.
Buy it. Yes, it started with there were some glitches at the beginning of the broadcast, but once they worked out those glitches, it was actually pretty cool, and I'm totally buying it because the toys got better throughout the game, and Ridder did not.
FanDuel fee, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm calling BS on that. I was watching in the beginning, and I guess the problem was I didn't keep watching. But the Andy's room thing was a good idea, just bad execution. With all the glitches and problems they had. I wasn't following it very well, and I didn't really like it.
Yeah. I also didn't like Desmond Ridder though. So it's tough to say which was worse. You know, with the Andy's room thing, it was cool to flip in and, like you said at the beginning, and then go back and flip in and see a couple of it in action. It was cool. It was very glitchy, but I don't know how they did it. So I thought the fact that they were even close to
You know what was good though? Once I realized that there was a delay between the game and Andy's room, like I would see a really cool play in the game, and then I'd flip to Andy's room and I would know it was coming. And the fact of how amazing it was, and like it was the exact play, right? It was perfect. Like it was crazy.
It definitely is. I mean, look, it's a really cool idea, and like it was cool to watch for a minute. But yeah, it was a little.
If you were like a young kid who was trying to learn football, it was a great way to learn football.
They were very helpful. But let's address the real issue here. Is it time? They said they're not going to do it. Is it time for the Falcons to pull Ridder and turn it over to Heineke?
Yeah.
I would say yes, because I think Heineke's the better quarterback, but I don't know that they are, because Ridder's kind of their future, right? You know, like he's the guy that they drafted.
I think they're learning quickly that if he is their future, they got to change their mind.
He's not their future. He's not their future. If they keep playing the way they're playing, their future is playing for USC or North Carolina right now.
Yeah, it's the truth. Speaking of offensives going nowhere fast, the Pittsburgh Steelers lost to the Houston Texans on J.J. Watt Day. But many people didn't see that coming. We could talk about the Texans in a second, but let's talk about the Steelers offense. It's time for Matt Canada to go. Fee, buy it or BS? Matt Canada should have been fired yesterday.
Yeah, I'm buying it. The Pittsburgh offense cannot do anything, although it doesn't help. There's two things that I want to say here. That Najee Harris is terrible. And I don't think that's from the offensive standpoint. I just think that he's not good anymore. I don't know if there's too much tread on his tires or what,
Yeah.
but he's kind of taking a nosedive here. And I don't think that has any kind of reflection on the offense as a whole. But also, it didn't help that Kenny Pickett got hurt. But their offense does not look good even with Kenny Pickett. So I think they obviously need a change at OC for sure.
Dutton.
I think it's like 36 games that he's been the offensive coordinator, and they've yet to crack 400 yards when every other team has cracked 400 yards or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, I thought it was going to happen. Tomlin said we're going to make changes. I'm still waiting to find out what that change was. Like, did they change the hand sanitizer in the locker room? Like, what's the change? Like, we're going to make changes. Like,
Yeah, it's yeah, you're both right. Like they need to make a change. And Dutton, to your point, Deontay Johnson is a starting #1 wide receiver and did not have a touchdown last season. I know he's hurt this year, so the streak continues, but their #1 receiver has not had a touchdown under Matt Canada. Like, what is going on? And I think that's the main issue. Yeah, I agree with you. Najee is banged up, but if you run Jalen Warren and have Najee as the complimentary back until he figures out what's wrong with him, which, like you said, may be the tread on the tires, they have too many pieces on that offense to be this bad. They do. It has to be coming from somewhere else because all these people are talented. Let's move on to a guy that kind of broke out last week, and he's actually been pretty good quietly for most of the season. Javonte Williams appears to be dinged up again. No surprise there. And Jaleel McLaughlin is Fee, we're gonna go to you. Buy it or BS. Is he a must get or is he FanDuel fees fool's gold?
I wanted to go with it, but honestly, I think that he's the real deal. But I don't know what Sean Payton is doing in Denver. So it's kind of hard to tell. But especially with Javonte Williams banged up, I think McLaughlin has a real role in this offense. And the fact that Williams is banged up is going to kind of bring that to the forefront here. So I don't think it's fool's gold. I think that he has a chance to do something real.
Dutton?
I want to see what he does this weekend against the Jets. He's going to basically be the starting back this weekend, it sounds like. I want to see what he does against the Jets. It's a solid defense. We all know it. And if he puts up good numbers, then I think it's him going forward.
And I think that's a very good point because they played the Bears. The Bears haven't been able to stop anything. I mean, they wound up blowing that game, right? Yes.
Yep.
I couldn't remember week to week. I mean, they had the lead. But to your point, Feed, with Sean Payton, let's step away from the offense for a second. Did you guys see the defense? Did you see any of that game? When I tell you there was no one within 5, they were playing prevent defense on Cole Kmet from the first whistle. I've never seen anything like it. The guy had a 10-yard cushion wherever he was on the field. It seems like look, coming into this season, you guys were high on Sean Payton and what he could do. You went back to the Parcells tree, and it was a big, like he's that guy that could come in here. He told Russell Wilson it's time to stop being a baby. And I told you everything he did with this guy named Drew Brees, and Russell Wilson wasn't Drew Brees. And right now I'm wondering if Sean Payton had a lot of the right people in place underneath him, or if the game's just kind of passed him by and he's still adjusting. What do you think about that? Either one of you.
I think the Broncos are not talented. And I think Sean Payton was fooled into thinking that he could go in there with the big names, but they're just names. I don't think they're talented. I mean, they're
right.
wide
There's
receivers.
a lot of money spent on those names. You're right. But right now, I think you said the best. They're just names.
Yeah, he's looking at the money that they're spending on the offense, and he's like, okay, I'm going in there. I'm going to have this great offense, but I don't think it's there for him. So I think that's the problem.
Faith, anything to add?
No, I mean, I completely agree with what Dutton said. I think that he thought that he had better guys, and it's just not kind of coming to fruition at all. So it's hard to work with it's hard to do what you want to do if you don't have the guys to pull it off.
Yeah, that's fair. Moving on. This guy has been people have fallen in love with Puka Nacua. But we discussed something a few weeks ago, so I'm gonna start with you. Buy it or BS. It is time to deal Puka Nacua in fantasy football circles.
Depends on what you are dealing him for. If you are in a situation where you need a quarterback, a running back, or a wide receiver who you think is better than Puka, or even a tight end, then yeah, go ahead and. I mean, if you have Puka and you want to get some big names in return that are going to give you some solid fantasy points, then go ahead and trade him. I mean, I wouldn't trade him for a wide receiver because I think he's going to be. I mean, we've talked about it. Matthew Stafford can only look one direction now, and that's Puka's way because that's what happens. I don't care if Cooper Kupp's coming back. He hasn't been there the whole time. Doesn't matter. See, that's what happens. Because remember, he had Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, and look what happened. He only threw to Cooper Kupp. Now he's got Puka and Cooper, and he's only going to throw to Puka, and it's going to be really hard to say Puka and Cooper. That's going to get confusing for people, so be careful.
So you honestly, truly believe in your heart of hearts, just because Stafford's on Puka right now, that he's not going to flip the switch right back to the arguably the best wide receiver in football as soon as he's back?
I don't think it's a flipping the switch. I think it's what's working for the offense and what he's comfortable with. And I think bringing Cooper Kupp back in there possibly messes up that flow, right? Plus, you know me, I don't know if people have heard it, but I still don't know if Cooper Kupp is that healthy. I think he plays.
Yeah. Well, that's the question. That's fair.
Right.
Fee.
Okay. What you guys are failing to realize is that when Cooper Kupp was putting up those ridiculous numbers, Robert Woods was averaging 14 and a half fantasy points a week. So you think that Cooper Kupp was gathering all this volume and no one else was doing anything else on the Rams. But that's not really the case. Robert Woods was doing just fine by himself. Now, he wasn't putting up huge numbers or, having ridiculous weeks where he puts up 20 or 30 points, but he was very quietly putting up 14 and a half fantasy points a week on average during those two ridiculous Cooper Kupp years. So even if I agree with Dutton that I don't think that Cooper Kupp is necessarily 100% either. So I agree there. He may have trouble separating. He may have trouble getting open like he used to. But they can scheme for that if they really want to get him the ball. But I don't know that they necessarily have to now that they have another guy in Puka that can get open and put up really good numbers just like Cooper Kupp was doing. I think that Stafford can hold get two guys fantasy wise good fantasy points. I think he can hold up for that, and I think that you keep him because I don't think he's going anywhere. Like, he's not just going to all of a sudden fall off the map and not average more double-digit fantasy points a week. I think he's locked into that, and I think that while he might not be a league winner, he's certainly an extremely great value if you were able to pick him up.
Oh, the value is incredible. I was actually talking with Jeff DiMatteo today, and he said it in all his years of fantasy, he never saw anyone that wasn't on anybody's radar, even in dynasty leagues, become, one of the most sought after wide receivers like that, right? Like it quickly, not just a couple years down the road. And you're right. The value you got in him is, and that may be even another reason to maybe think about dangling him out there with Kupp returning. But to your point, I didn't realize that Robert Woods put up those numbers, and Stafford, he's never really had the opportunity to support two wide receivers minus Woods, because who was next to Calvin Johnson? Who was next to any, who was next to those guys when he was there? The question I would ask is, are the Rams just playing above their heads right now? Because that offense seems like it's on a freight train to start heading downhill pretty quickly, especially with the Stafford injury. I had three teams in the mix for the next question, and I see the way that you answered. Coming into the season, we thought the Eagles were the team to beat in the NFC, and the Chiefs were the team to beat in the AFC. But now the 49ers are in the mix. I think those are the 3 teams you're looking at as the teams to beat, if you would. So buy it or BS, the Eagles are no longer the team to beat in the NFC. Dutton.
Oh, yeah, I buy it. I mean, it's the 49ers.
Yeah. Fee?
Yeah, I agree. I'm buying it. It's the 49ers. The Eagles are banged up. They're still winning and they still will win. But once they hit the playoffs, if they still have injuries or guys that are banged up that are not playing at 100%, they're going to have issues when they start playing good teams.
Yeah, they played a soft schedule so far.
Right. And oh, by the way, the 49ers team is loaded with talent. Just everywhere you look, on offense, on defense, and it's kind of hard to beat that. They have their one Achilles heel, I think, is their offensive line, but it doesn't matter because of the guys that they have on offense between Debo, Ayuk, and McCaffrey. They're able to cover all that up. So I don't even know that it really matters so much.
Yeah, I'm gonna. The Niners are just too good right now. It seems like they allow points just to keep teams in games so they don't get bored, right? Like that's how good I think their defense is too. All right, so let's move on to we can't call it the Jameson Williams. We have to change mid-season. So we're just gonna go to locks of the week because Jameson Williams, of course, if you didn't see the news, the NFL realized they were being complete morons and punishing people for betting on non-NFL games more than they were punishing. We're not going to get into it, but some other really bad offenses. So they shortened Jameson Williams. There was someone else on the Seahawks, I believe. Their suspensions from 6 games to 4, and now moving forward, if you get caught betting on non-NFL games, it's only a 2-game suspension. But that's neither here nor there. What's here or there is our locks of the week. Last week, if you remember, in week 3, I made 2 picks and they both hit. Last week, I hit again with the Jaguars beating the Falcons, and I moved to 4-1 on the season. Dutton moved to 1-3 on the season, unfortunately. And Fee, who also made 2 picks in that same week with me, bet on picked the Eagles and lost that game, so moved to 3-2 on the season. 3 and out as a team. We're 2-2. So we're doing all right, but we're going to do better. I feel like we're going to go on a win streak starting this week for the rest of the season. That's how confident I am. So, gentlemen, Fee, we'll start with you. Lock of the week. Who do you got?
I got the Eagles -4.5 playing the Rams. I know we just talked about the Rams and how good they are, but their problem, and Stafford is dinged up. Their offensive line is terrible, and the Eagles, the strength of that team is their defensive line. So, the Eagles are keeping teams, in games, but I think they cover this 4.5 against the Rams.
Dutton, how about you?
I'm taking the Jets +1.5 against the Broncos. I just told you the Broncos are terrible. Zach Wilson actually looked like a somewhat competent quarterback Sunday night against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are way better than the Broncos, so I'm taking the Jets.
I was going to add this to buy it or BS, but I saw Dutton pick them, so let's talk about it a little bit. Hot take number 1 of the show, Zach Wilson looked like a decent quarterback. Not great, not good, but come on, he looked all right for some of that.
Serviceable. He looked serviceable. If he does that the rest of the season, they should be in games like they were. And then it's up to them to win those games. Like Zach Wilson, yeah, he fumbled at the end of the game, which probably cost them the game. He can't do that, right?
Right.
But
I mean, it was his best performance of the year, put it that way.
Right. It was probably his best performance in a long time.
Yeah. And, Rodney Harrison calls him garbage. It was just like, it's a weird time to call someone garbage on national TV as a commentator.
When you just played your best
arguably
game.
Almost beat the Chiefs, right?
Right. And you played your best game. Like he did. Like, I'm not a fan, but he played his best game.
Fee, what were you going to add?
Well, I just wanted to say that the Jets have an amazing group of players making up that entire team that help Zach Wilson look good.
That's fair, too.
I still think Zach Wilson is not good, but at least he has an offensive line that can protect him somewhat, as opposed to, another team maybe giving up 11 sacks or something like that.
Okay, so I agree with you, Fee. Let me rephrase it. Zach Wilson looked good enough that you maybe could starting Garrett Wilson with a little bit more confidence in fantasy football again. That's all I was saying. And the other pieces that you're talking about, because they do have good pieces.
It depends on what team they play, but
That's
I would say yes, you can play Garrett Wilson because he is amazing. It really just depends on what team the Jets are playing.
well, they're playing the Broncos, who I told you think that prevent
Fire up Garrett Wilson.
prevent defense is what you do in the first quarter. You
Right.
ready for hot take number 2 of the show, gentlemen? Your Houston Texans are winning the AFC South. There it is. They already beat the Jaguars. They should have beat the Colts. They've had a busted up offensive line all year. They've been missing 4 players on offensive line, and they're starting to practice and hopefully slowly come back. But you know what they've been doing to help with that offensive line is they've been taking this guy, this veteran tight end, his name's Dalton Schultz, and having him block. And last week they let him go a little bit. And him and CJ Stroud had a nice connection. Then you add in those wide receivers they have. Then you add in the running backs they have. They get a healthy offensive line. Fee, you've been talking about offensive line. I don't see how anyone in the South is beating these guys. And the whole reason I bring that up is because the Texans are my lock of the week. They're getting 1 point on the road to the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know why they're getting a point. I don't know how. Their defense has been playing outstanding. They have players on the IR and like Stingley and other their young stars, and they have people just coming in and stepping up. I don't know why they would be afraid of the Falcons with D'Amico Ryans and this defense. I'm locking in my Texans, and I think maybe that's the first time in 4 years of the show that I've got to pick the Texans in locks of the week, and I'm doing it. So, gentlemen, who do we want to lock in as our? I think all 3 of these teams win this week.
I like the Texans because it was going to be my lock of the week until I saw you had it.
Nice. Fee?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll go with it.
Believe in that game.
It's just
the Texans' rush defense is tough, and the Falcons have Bijan. I'll give you that.
They do. The Falcons are playing at home. I just think it's a weird spot. That's all. Houston, they're coming off a big win.
You think they're faking us out because they've won 2 games in a row that people are hot on them?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I agree. I think Houston is good, but they still have holes.
They definitely,
as you say.
Yeah.
Not that Atlanta's any kind of good team, but this is going to be a very close game. So I'm not really sure which way it's going to go. I'm okay with taking the Texans. I like them. I just
spent a lot of time.
If I were really betting this game, I would stay away from it.
What do we want to do?
Go to Eagles. Let's go. We got to keep this moving.
Let's go to the Eagles. Fee, we are at your stacks of the week. I don't even want to talk about last week's stacks of the week because they make me upset. But shout out to Brad, who obviously used one of your stacks that you nor myself used. He used the other stack, and he won all the money, and we didn't.
Yeah.
So let's move on to this week.
All right. This week, the answer is 1 stack. I'm going to give you 3, but it's really this one. It's the Miami Dolphins, and it's the vaunted quintuple stack. You play Tua and Tyreek and Waddle and Mostert and Achane. No, I'm just kidding. You can't play all 5 of them. I don't think you can fit all 5 of them with their salaries. Right. But you play as many of those guys as you possibly can. I mean, Tua is the obvious one, but you can totally. I would play Achane over Mostert because he's cheaper by $500. And Waddle, actually, I know he's coming off the concussion, so maybe this is why he's so cheap, but he's only 6,800. Yeah. I mean, you got to get him in your lineup somehow. I would venture to even say it's a 4-man stack here, with Tua, Tyreek, Waddle, and Achane. But I think you have to get some of those guys, if not all of those guys, into your lineups this week against this team. All right. Stack number 2 is Jared Goff, stacked with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Goff is 7,400, Amon-Ra 7,700. And I would even go as far as getting Laporta in your lineup at 6K they're playing the Panthers. We all know how bad the Panthers are on defense. They're not a really very good team, which could, not be great for the passing game if they decide to just keep running it. But I feel like this is like a good chance to kind of put up some points for Detroit. So I got the Goff, Amon-Ra, Laporta stack there. And then my third stack.
Would you feel comfortable running it back with Thielen in that game? Because he's probably affordable, right?
Yeah, you know what? Thielen actually is a little more expensive for some reason. I think I'm gonna pull it up.
Points 3 weeks in a row, so that's not surprising.
Yeah. Thielen is, where the hell is he? Hey, seriously?
Dutton, I got several comments about you're Thielen it if Dalton's dealing it comment last week.
It was a good one.
I can't find him. Oh wait, here we go. Thielen is 6,700, so he's not crazy expensive. So yeah, you could absolutely bring it back with Thielen. You could go Goff, Amon-Ra, and Thielen. That only would cost you 21,800 total between the three of them. You could totally fit in a ton more guys based on those salaries. So yeah, I think Thielen is viable for sure. Only at 6,700, so that's good. And then my third stack, I got the highest salaried quarterback and tight end here in Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Mahomes is at 9K, Kelce's at 8,800. But I also like the triple stack with Raji Rice. He's only at 5K, and they're playing Minnesota. So if Minnesota can somehow stick around and put up some points, between Cousins and Jefferson, I feel like, Minnesota's defense is not great. No. And Mahomes and Kelce and hopefully Rice can really do some damage if that game happens to shoot out. So I like that stack as well. My one-off value play of the week is Joe Mixon. He's only 7K playing Arizona. If Burrow is so banged up and that Bengals offense can't do much through the air, why not try running it on the ground, especially against Arizona, who I know has played very well recently, but still is not a great team. And I also put in here Zay Flowers only at 5,900 playing Pittsburgh for Baltimore. I wouldn't stack that game. I think that's going to be a low scoring game. Both of those teams play at a very slower pace. But I like Flowers at that salary at 5,900. Nice. And that's it. That's my stacks.
I like it.
Don't forget the Dolphins.
How can you forget the Dolphins? You put 1,700 of them out there. Every Dolphin who's ever played start this week. Well, that works. I think I'm going with the Lions stack, and I think I may run back Thielen in one of my leagues. But in honor of the reunion tour, week 5 of the fantasy football season honors in sync with the first round of bye. We got big teams on buys this week. We got the Chargers, who have a lot of fantasy goodness, the Browns, who have plenty of fantasy goodness, the Seahawks, who had our start of the week at running back and Ken Walker 3 sticks on buy, and the Bucks, who have some fantasy good. Sorry, Dutton, there's maybe a player on there.
Maybe, but they're first place. That's all that matters.
That's very true. So we have to, there's between the injuries and our first round of buys, we got to start digging a little deeper this week on our starts and sits. Remember, we've been really good throughout the season. We've been 6 for 8 almost every week. Last week we were 5 of 8 on our picks. We rocked on the sits. We've been killing it on sits. We just got to get better at starts. So let's start that trend this week. Dutton, who are you starting at quarterback this week?
I'm starting Joshua Dobbs against the Bengals.
Talk about digging deep. I want to hear this one.
I'm telling you, man. Look, the guy, he wasn't even did you see he wasn't even a jersey option on the jersey touch screen?
I did see that.
In the Arizona Cardinals gift shop. That's amazing. And yet he's dealing. And why wouldn't you play him against a team that, I don't know what the Bengals are. I don't think they know what they are. I'm starting Josh Dobbs.
Yeah. V.
I'm starting Sam Howell against the Chicago Bears.
I'm just going to say this about your 2 picks. If I have to start either of them in my league, I'm in a lot of trouble, boys. I mean, Every quarterback I have is on bye, and all my other 3 backups
You
are
told us to dig deep. We're digging, man.
done.
Digging deep.
I'm going
Uh,
Matt
uh,
Stafford. We talked about the Eagles a little bit earlier that their secondary's dinged up, and you know what? They have allowed, I think, 9 touchdowns this year when I looked. So they're letting up touchdowns to the air. Stafford's thrown for 300 yards in 3 of his 4 games. I think he gets like we said, we're digging deep. Do I think Stafford's a start on a weekly basis? No. Do I think you could start him this week and maybe get some points? Yes. Who do we want to lock in, gentlemen?
Sam Howell, because that's what I wanted to start, and then Fiamano had him in the spreadsheet already.
You got to start
Oh.
anyone against the Bears. It's hard to
Right, exactly.
Let's move on to running back. Fee. Oh, you already talked about yours, but we'll let you talk about him again.
I did, yeah. So one of my value plays from FanDuel, I really like Joe Mixon against the Cards. Start him.
Dutton.
I'm starting Aaron Jones. It's his comeback tour starting this week, Monday night against the Raiders.
Oh, that's
Why
a
not?
Monday nighter. Yeah, why not? Why not? And you want to know what? We'll get to him. We'll talk about him in a minute. I'm going to start David Montgomery. I do agree with Fee that I think it's going to be a pass-heavy attack, but we have seen that they're not letting Jahmyr Gibbs get that ball in the red zone yet, and it's the Montgomery show, and we know that this offense is going to score points. So I think Montgomery gets another touchdown until they hand that ball over to Gibbs for good. Who do we want to start? I like Montgomery here, but I like your comeback toward narrative on a Monday night game.
Yeah,
So
I like Aaron Jones too.
yeah, let's do
I
that.
like Montgomery. I like Montgomery a lot.
I like
also.
Montgomery too.
Okay, I like Montgomery a lot. I picked him. Let's do
Go with
Montgomery.
Montgomery.
Moving on to wide receiver, I picked one of Fee's value plays of the week, and I just like the connection he's made on so young in his career with Lamar Jackson. And I think you're right. I think it's a low scoring game, but this is a guy that gets maybe a carry here and there and gets 5 receptions for 90 yards, it seems like, very easily in the right matchup. So I'm staying Zay Flowers. Dutton, how about you?
I'm starting Christian Watson because this is the first week that I feel like Jordan Love has had his entire offense at practice. And I'm excited to see what happens on Monday night.
Okay, so we'll talk about him here because you want to know what? I'm all on the Jordan Love fantasy train. I was 100% with you last week that he should be a sit, that he was going to hit this brick wall, and he made it. He didn't win the game. He didn't have a great real life game, but fantasy wise, he got another 20 points for you. And it's like Dutton just said, that offense is finally coming back. How is he not going to get better? So I don't know what Jordan Love means for the Green Bay Packers in their future. I don't care. I'm not a Packers fan, but if I had Jordan Love on my fantasy team, I'm pretty happy right now. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Fee, who's your wide receiver start of the week?
I'm going with Michael Pittman playing Tennessee. Tennessee is a pass funnel team. They're they're one of the best teams against the run, not so good against the pass. Anthony Richardson is back playing well. And Michael Pittman is going to be on the other end of that. So start Michael Pittman.
Who do we want to start?
I like Zay Flowers because I think Zay Flowers is a dominant wide receiver by the end of this year.
I like that call. I don't know how dominant any wide receiver can get in that Ravens offense, but I do think he's very, very good. So yeah, I'm good with plugging in. Obviously, I picked him. Fee picked him as a value pick, so I think we're good locking him in. Let's move on to tight end. Fee, we'll start with you.
I like Jake Ferguson playing against the Niners. I know we talked about how good the Niners defense is. Dallas is going to have to move the ball somehow, and Ferguson has been getting some catches, some targets, and some points. And I think that continues this week.
Dutton.
Dalton Schultz, you mentioned him before. Him and CJ, they're homies.
Yeah, he's getting to run a little bit more routes and not having to stay in and block. I'm going to go with Zach Ertz. You like Dobbs. He has been his favorite target. And like you said, the Bengals offenses look bad, but did you see them against Tennessee? Their defense did not look much better. So I think Ertz gets peppered with targets this week. Who do we want to lock in?
I like Ertz.
Ouch, that Ertz. I'm good with starting Ertz. Obviously, I picked him. What do we think? Dutton, you good?
Good. Let's go.
All right, our starts of the week: at quarterback, Sam Howell; at running back, David Montgomery; at wide receiver, Zay Flowers; and at tight end, Zach Ertz. Let's move on. Let's keep the train rolling and move to sits. Dutton, we'll start with you.
Until he proves me wrong for the rest of this season, I'm sitting Joe Burrow.
There's no argument there. Fee.
Yeah. I'm sitting Russell Wilson against the Jets.
Remember last week I said that the Jaguars were my lock of the week, and I told you Trevor Lawrence was my sit of the week just because I didn't think he was going to put up fantasy numbers, and I nailed both. He didn't, and I nailed both projections, and that's why Trevor Lawrence is my sit of the week again against that Bills defense that is getting lots of turnovers this year. I think these are good because we have a week where we have to dig deep, and we're giving you 3 big high-profile names that you have to sit. So I like this. Who do we want to lock in? I mean, Burrow.
So I think the answer is Burrow, but just so you know, I really wanted to sit Trevor Lawrence, but I saw you had put him
Me
already.
too.
So
That's why I picked Joe Burrow.
So we were all on Trevor.
So maybe that means we go Trevor. Maybe that means
right.
I think Burrow's the obvious one to sit.
Right.
So maybe we sit Trevor this week.
We'll stick with the Jaguar sits and Fee. We'll start with you at sit running back.
Yeah, I'm sitting Travis Etienne against Buffalo.
Yeah. Dutton.
Fee, you mentioned it before. The Eagles' defensive line is something to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
You don't want to play with it. Kyron Williams, he's banged up as it is coming into this game, so I'm sitting him.
And I'm going to sit Ramondre Stevenson. He's getting close to the sit every week category that you got to dig deep and find another running back at this point. I am perplexed on Kyron Williams. I told you guys I didn't believe in him, and then because he was just getting no yards and all touchdowns, and last week he had a nice game. Now I feel like everyone's on him, and he's banged up facing the Eagles line, like you both said. It's like I can't win with this guy. So it's kind of like a game that Feed talks about that he would just stay away from gambling, and I just don't even want to make a decision on Kyron Williams because everything I say is wrong.
We can have a theme here if we go with Etienne and then we play the wide receiver game next. So
okay. I see where you're going with this. So we'll sit Etienne. I'll start with wide receiver because it's part of my lock of the week and that vaunted Texans secondary. But I'm sitting Drake London. The Texans have only allowed 1 passing TD. I think Ritter has only thrown 1 passing TD. So I think the odds are in the Texans' favor on that one. Dutton.
I'm sitting Calvin Ridley because Trevor Lawrence did not look very good last week against the Falcons defense. And now he gets the great invitation of playing the Bills defense, who are coming in after shutting down the Dolphins, who put up 70 the week before, can only get up 20 this week. So I'm sitting Calvin Ridley.
He looks more comfortable with his guy Kirk from last year too. He does.
He likes Calvin Kirk.
Yeah. Fee.
Unpopular opinion right here, but I think maybe you should sit Puka this week against the Eagles. I talked about it earlier when I was talking about the spread in this game, but Stafford's slightly banged up. The Rams offensive line, not great, and also banged up. And the strongest part of the Philly team is that defensive line. So I don't think Stafford's going to have a ton of time to throw the ball. So I want to sit Puka ?
I assume we're going to put Ridley as our lock of the week at wide receiver.
Of course we are, because we're sitting all the offense for the Jaguars.
Too bad none of us have Ingram
2 weeks in a row in London. I just don't see it. Starting the Kyle Pitts tight end sit of the week. It's still Kyle Pitts as the go-to sit of the week, but we're going to pick 3 other ones for you. Fee, start.
Yeah, it's Kyle Pitts. No, I'm sitting George Kittle against Dallas. Dallas is 2nd or 3rd in the league against the tight end. And I think that with, Dallas's, their injuries are in the secondary. Their defensive line and their linebackers are great. Ridiculous. I think Kittle stays in to block more, which is what San Francisco is kind of known to do with him. So I'm going to sit Kittle against Dallas this week.
Dutton.
I'm sitting Kyle Pitts. No, I mean, of course. But just so you know, the rest of the world is catching up to us because I'm on vacation this week. And the other day I had TV on. I was flipping through ESPN, NFL Network, Fox Sports, all of them, and every one of them were talking about the Falcons and the lack of use that Kyle Pitts get, and why even draft a tight end if you're not going to use them. And it was fascinating because I was like, we've been saying that for 3 years. But I'm sitting Darren Waller this week against the Dolphins because I don't think Daniel Jones knows that he's on the Giants.
I'm sitting Cole Kmet. I think a lot of people are going to be on him. I told you I watched that game. He had a 10-yard cushion on every catch. He had 2 touchdowns last week. The Commanders have not let up a touchdown to the tight end and are allowing 1.8 points a fantasy week to tight ends. So Cole Kmet, I think he's fool's gold this week. I like Kmet too. Fee will tell you that from last year. I'm a big Kmet guy, but I don't think this is the week that he does anything. Who do you want to lock in? Kyle Pitts?
I like Cole Kmet because as your sit, just because of what you said, he's not going to have another huge week like he had last week.
Yeah, yep, I agree with that. I think that last week was kind of an anomaly. Like you said, he
kind
was
of just like somebody told you last week to sit Raheem Mostert, who put up a whopping 5 fantasy points after putting up 42 the week before.
Nice. The A-Chain show has begun. So we're going to lock in Cole Kmet. That means your 3 and out sits of the week are Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Calvin Ridley, and Cole Kmet. That should do it for this week. Did we forget anything? Probably. If we
start
forgot
all
anything,
your Dolphins.
Yeah. And sit Kyle Pitts. If we forgot anything, let us know in the comments. Give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe, hit all those buttons, and come back next week. We're looking forward to see you. Gentlemen, anything before we go?
Dolphins.
No.
All right. Win games, win money. We'll see you next week on 3 and Out.